What is up, everybody? My name is Sawyer Hartman if you're new here, but if you're not and you're already part of the family, you know we are all about photography and cameras here. But today's actually going to be a little bit different because for the first time ever, I'm actually going to be editing your photographs. And they are really good. I'm going to be taking photos like this and editing them into photos like this. So without further ado, it is 2 a.m. here in Hawaii and this video goes up tomorrow at 10 a.m. We're pulling an all-nighter, so let's just get editing. Yeah! Welcome back, everybody, to a brand new episode. Sorry there's been a little 2-3 week hiatus of videos. I am actually working on a super secret photography app for the iPhone that will be free and like an incredible tool for you guys. We're like 2 weeks away from launching. So that's no excuses, but that's where I've been. We're building it and it takes a lot more time than I thought. But today is a little bit special and we're gonna treat it as such because today is not about me and my photographs. Today is all about you and the incredible photographs that you have been able to create. In today's video, I'm going to take your raw photographs and edit them the way I would have edited them if they were going on my Instagram feed. My buddy Peter McKinnon actually made these videos a couple months back and I messaged him the other day. I was like, can I make one for my audience? And he said, sure. But I am so blown away by the caliber of photos you guys have been able to create. I'm so excited to get into today's video. Today I've selected 5 photographs to edit for you and show you not only what my edits look like, but how I actually achieve them so that you can bring it to your own work. But I want to thank the 2,000 people who submitted photos within 12 hours. Very, very tricky to go through and sort, but we got it done. So if at any point you decide you like this video, go ahead and subscribe. I make new videos every single Sunday when I'm not 2 weeks away from an app launch. But if you love cameras, you will love it here. So make sure to subscribe and let's just dive into the first photograph. The first image we're gonna be editing today, I call the balloon, and it's brought to us by Tom OBH. I doubt that's his last name, but I'm sure it stands for something cool. Now, right off the bat, this is an incredible image. I don't know how you captured this, but it's very, very special. So now let's try to edit it and bring all of that specialness to the surface so people see it right away. So my objectives for the edit of this image are actually gonna be quite simple. I want to create color separation in all of the fields and the sky. And then secondly, and most importantly, I want to make sure when you look at the image, your eye goes straight to the balloon and isn't like lost in all of the beauty. The balloon is the subject, it should draw your eye in. So let's see how I would edit this. So the first thing I did was import this photo into Lightroom. The first thing I did was start with a really basic correction to try to balance out the image. I raised the contrast, brought down the highlights, brought down the shadows, raised the whites, and brought down the blacks. Now, for this image, I knew I really wanted to go with the cinematic color feel, so I jumped straight to the tone curve, because that is how I edit film. Not camera film, but movie film. I made myself a very simple S-curve for both red, green, and blue. And as you can see, that simple combination already has the image coming along really nicely in terms of color. Now, since I wanted to create a dreamlike feel to this image, I'm actually gonna take clarity to the left. I'm gonna de-clarify my image so it kind of gives it this hazy dreamlike feel. And then I'll take texture to the right and I'll add texture so that we still remain sharp in the image, but we have this nice dreamy soft feel. Now remember, we really wanted to create a lot of color separation in the fields on the ground. So I navigated down to the Hue tab, or the HSL tab, which is Hue, Saturation, and Luminance. I clicked Hue, and this is where I started messing with individual color values until I started getting a really nice separation of color in those fields. Now, you're gonna wanna pay attention to this part because this is my little secret weapon for every photographer listening right now. Go down to camera calibration at the very, very bottom of all of your tools in Lightroom. We're gonna do what I call the Sawyer split today because I do this on almost every photograph I have. I take the red primary and the red saturation to the right, but then I take the blue primary and the blue saturation to the left. And this balances out your image while giving it a really nice orange and teal undertone. which is what I go for. It's what a lot of photographers go for. They're complementary colors. You're probably gonna wanna go for it too. You can fiddle with the green and the shadows just to get it exactly where you want, but this is a secret weapon for figuring out your color. So now what? We have all of the colors sorted in the image, but I'm still actually a little unhappy with the sky. I find it too bright and also very distracting. Now what I actually did to fix this was take one of these gradient masks in Lightroom, one of the beautiful gradient masks that you are going to start using every day now. I took the gradient mask from the top down, so it was really only editing the sky. And first what I did is I actually lowered the white balance. I cooled the image off so that the sky got more of a nice natural blue. But I wasn't done there. Next thing I did was actually lower the exposure of the sky as well so that it darkened out so it was no longer distracting. Now, when you look at the image, your eye goes straight to the middle. To help sell this effect even more, you can add a vignette and just then the eye, everything's dark and your eye literally will go straight to the middle, and that's exactly where the balloon was. Now, by far, you could post this image on your Instagram feed and you would be fine. However, I kind of had a cool idea of a way to make it seem a little bit more special. But to do this, I needed to throw the image into Photoshop. Once in Photoshop, I just simply, I added a rainbow, just like that. And I got rid of the black background of the rainbow image by setting my blending mode to screen, and boom. But again, this was the before image, and this is the final edited image we were able to come up with in less than 10 minutes. I always knew you guys were talented, but I swear to God, every single day you guys continue to surprise me in the best way possible. So moving on to the second image sent in all the way from Canada. This is actually from someone I've met personally, Devin Olson, a very, very talented young photographer. And this is a photo of my friend Charlie Jordan. But this photo, unfortunately, has a couple things wrong with it we're gonna need to fix. The first one, it is dark, it is blue, and most importantly, there is no life in the skin tones. If you notice, there is no warmth, there is no orange, there is no life to the person that's in the image. When I first saw this image, I actually thought it was gonna be unsavable, so I took a stab at editing it anyway. And here's what I did. As soon as the image was loaded into Lightroom, I brought up the exposure until I could just see her face to see what I was working on. And then I brought the white balance a little warmer in order to kind of counteract some of the blue that was just taking over the image. Before we get into too much more of the tweak edits, we really need to take care of the skin tone problem. The method I used to fix the skin tone problem was to grab a radial mask, which is the circle mask from Lightroom, and drag it onto the face and body of Charlie, and then invert the mask so any tweaks and things we do happen inside the circle, not on the outside. So what do you think would be the first thing we would try to raise up in this mask? Yes, you're right, the white balance. You want to warm up the white balance to start bringing some of that warmth and orange back into your image. You'll also see that under the white balance slider is a little slider called tint. You can also use this to try to balance out your image and get any colors out that really shouldn't be there. But this is already starting to look a little bit better. So now we can go back to this basic correction and just fiddle with the sliders until we make her pop. Again, we are making these edits within the radial mask, so they are only going to affect what's inside that circle. I chose to add saturation because I'm trying to get as much color back into the image as possible, but that can be up to you. Back in the normal image, not in the radial mask, in the entire image, we are going to cool off the white balance or drag it to the left so that the whole image goes kind of blue. Once this happens, click back onto the radial mask and warm it up again so that the background starts to be blue and she starts to be orange. This color separation is really important because it's what we were lacking in the original image. My goal is to make her a pop of warmth and color in an otherwise frozen, desolate background. The next thing I did was have my fun in the camera calibration section, doing that good old Sawyer split, red to the right, blue to the left, and using shadows and green to kind of tweak your image. And the image actually started coming along really nicely. In all honesty, it's starting to look incredible. I couldn't even believe we were able to get the warmth back in the skin like that. But we weren't done yet. The skin is, again, our biggest concern and focus here. So I use the HSL, or Hue Saturation Luminance function, to again adjust just the reds and oranges in all three categories until I was happy with the skin color. Now, as you can tell, I'm actually a huge fan of the orange and teal Hollywood movie cinema look. And to further sell this effect, we're actually gonna now go to split toning, which is a very rarely used feature that should be used all the time. For split toning, we're gonna take the highlights and we're gonna assign them to orange and bring up saturation. And shadows, we're going to assign to the blue value we want, and again, bring up saturation. And finally, just like the last image, I used a vignette to darken the edges and draw your attention straight to her face. And that's it, we're done. This is our final image, and this is the image we started from. But Devin, thank you for submitting this photo. I really had a hell of a good time editing this one, in all honesty. I can't wait to get to Canada and see you and all the boys soon. But for now, let's just move on to photo number 3. Now, the third photograph I've selected to edit for you today is from Mitch Palms, and I've titled it Neon, because it is a beautiful image of a girl with some incredible neon signs behind her. Firstly, I'm not a huge fan of red and purple. These colors that are happening on her face are not complementary to each other, and they're not even really that flattering, especially when you pair them against someone who edits in a sense like maybe Brandon Wolfel. The objectives of my edit for this photograph are going to be to try to achieve that cotton candy or whimsical edit. It's a very, very hard edit to pull off, but I'm fully committed to trying to figure it out and showing you. So let's just dive into what I did. Once we're loaded up in Lightroom, the first thing we're gonna do is just a really, really basic correction. We're gonna lower the highlights. Essentially, we're gonna try to save the sign so that you can see all of the sign and then expose the face. Just play around until it looks right. But what is important is establishing these underlying cotton candy colors in our shadows and highlights before we ever start editing. We're gonna do this by going down to split toning. We're going to again assign the highlights to orange and the shadows to blue and bring up the saturation on both. This gives us a really good baseline of the colors underneath, so when we start tweaking things later, it will only emphasize the colors that we want to be there. So let's jump down to camera calibration and do that good old-fashioned Sawyer split. Red primary and red saturation go to the right, and blue primary and blue saturation go to the left. And then use shadows and green, tweak them until you're able to balance your image. So now this image is starting to have the tones that we really want to be in it, but it is lacking a little bit of contrast. So we're just gonna go to tone curve and we're gonna make a very simple S in the tone curve to just bring up the highlights and crush the shadows. And then the last thing I did in Lightroom was actually go to that HSL, Hue, Saturation, and Luminance tab, and I adjusted the red and oranges under Hue until I could get the skin tones to a really, really nice orange that I wanted instead of red. In Photoshop, I did two things. First, I made a curves adjustment layer and just flattened out the shadows, so I didn't affect the top part. I just made like a Nike check mark, and that gave us a really nice matte look to this image. Then, once that was done, all I did was bring in a little bit of bokeh, I have no idea how to say it, even though I'm a photographer. So I added some bokeh to the negative space on the bottom left. And then again, I just changed the blending mode to lighten, and I dropped the bokeh layer behind the tone curve one so it all kind of fit together, and that was it, I was done. This is the final image we were able to come up with, and this is the image that we started with. As you can see, not only is it better exposed, you can read the sign and it looks whimsical, but the orange and blue in our final image is so much more appealing than the red and dark purple in the first image. You don't have to find signs that are these actual colors, you just have to learn how to be able to adjust the colors in your image to make sure it's flattering to the human eye, so when someone looks at it they go, that looks nice. The fourth image that I've selected to edit today, I've titled Waterfall by Kenny Muhart. I hope I said your last name right. It's very hard to pronounce last names, so I'm trying. First off, right off the bat, this is an incredible location and an incredible quality photograph. But there were a few things about the raw image that I wanted to change. The first one was, it's a rather dark image. There's a railing in the left-hand corner that I found distracting. Also, I was afraid that the eye might not find the subject right away and would rather just be looking around the landscape. So I wanted to make sure your eye goes directly to the subject. And then finally, I looked at this image and I thought, we could add some rain. We could do that. We could do that, so let's try. First thing we did once we were in Lightroom, just like all the other times, we did a very simple, basic correction to just balance the image and get it where we wanted to start editing from. So once the image is like properly balanced and ready to be edited, first things first, we need to send this photograph to Photoshop and we need to take out everything that's distracting. The first thing we're gonna take out is this girl who's just on the stairs. So to do this, we're gonna use the stamp tool in Photoshop. You can just click S or it looks like this. And then all we're gonna do is sample next to the girl in the image and then just paint her out like she didn't exist. And once you've ruined her life, you can go over to the railing and start painting that out. It might take a little bit longer, but it can 100% always be painted out. A little pro tip is to always try to sample new parts of the image every couple clicks, just so that all the textures remain like natural looking and nothing repeats too often. Now that everything is out of the image that might be considered distracting to our subject, we're gonna add in a little bit of rain. We're gonna rotate it so that it's coming in at an angle, and then we're gonna add a little bit of a Gaussian blur just to make it look right depth of field wise. And that's as far as you need to go in Photoshop. Send that photograph back to Lightroom and let's get editing. Now, actually, for this image, I'm actually gonna use my old faithful preset from my Sawyer's Leica Looks preset pack. However, I really find presets to be extremely good at, one, giving you ideas of potential edits you could do, or secondly, the reason I use them for every photograph is to start a base layer and then add on top of it. So for this image, we're using the filter Old Faithful as the base. Then once the preset is applied, I'm gonna add some clarity for a little bit of grittiness and make it look really kind of dramatic. And I'm gonna add a little bit of a dehaze to kind of give us this really nice classic film look. And then finally, I just cooled down the entire image with white balance to make the blues in the water pop, and I was done. This is the original image. This is our final edit. I hope you like it. I, for one, never really use rain or extra snow or all of these things, but it added drama. It added a mood, and I like it. I liked it too. So tell me in the comments if you enjoyed it. Moving on to photograph number 5. This is our last image, and it's probably also the most tricky image to ever edit, so I want to solve this problem for you right now. Our last and final image is titled Stingray by Rye Prester. Now, why would I say this is the hardest image to edit out of everything we've done? It's because underwater is extremely tricky. If you look at the raw image, it is just very, very blue and not very like dramatic. It looks like a crappy underwater photograph, even though it's not. You just have to know how to color these correctly. So I'm gonna teach you right now how you can edit underwater photographs. Sand isn't blue, so why in the raw image is it blue? Here's how we correct these things. First things first, once we're in Lightroom, drag the white balance up until you start to see a little bit of separation between the green and the blue. You can also drag the tint to the right. This helps neutralize some of the excess green that might be in the water. As you can see, this is already a massive improvement, but we're just getting started. In the basic corrections, I added contrast to make the stingray pop. I brought down the highlights, I brought down the shadows, I brought up the whites, and I brought up the blacks just to expose the image properly. Now, to tint the image, I jumped down to camera calibration. I dragged the shadows to the right to neutralize any green that might still be in the water. And then I did a variation of the Sawyer split. I brought my red primary and red saturation to the right, but I also brought my green primary and green saturation to the right. And then finally, like always, I brought my blue primary and blue saturation to the left. This started to give me more of the feel I wanted, but we're still very far from our final image. Now we're going to use that HSL or hue, saturation, luminance feature to really start separating those dark blues from the whites in the sand. Using the hue, I took the yellow all the way to the left, the green all the way to the left, the aqua all the way to the right, and now we start to see the separation I'm talking about, but it can be even stronger. Now, in luminance is really where I made these colors split. Aqua goes all the way to the right, and blue goes all the way to the left, and look what it did. Do you see? That is what we wanted. But believe it or not, it actually can be more separated. So using the saturation tab in YSL, I brought down the green and the yellow. But with the aqua, notice how it affects everything at the bottom. Well, take that all the way to the left and you finally have real separation. This was the goal. This is what you wanted from your photograph. This is the entire goal of underwater photography, is to create this separation. Rye Prester, you killed it with this shot. When I first saw this image, I didn't know what it would look like, so I wanted to take on the challenge of trying to make it look like a real underwater shot, and I think we accomplished it, man. So kudos to you, great job on the shot. And Noah Nomura, who's the king of underwater, thank you for teaching me how to edit underwater. Obviously, this technique works really, really well, and I thought you guys might want to know about it too. And that concludes the video. I really hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to give the video a thumbs up or subscribe. I make brand new film and photography related videos every single Sunday when I'm not launching an app in a few weeks. But also a massive thank you to everyone who submitted a photo. Whether we used it or not, your guys' talent and skill literally increases every single day, and I could not be more proud of you. You guys, whether you're just starting out in your career as a creator or you are a seasoned professional, your guys' love and passion and dedication to photography keeps me going, and I feel really blessed to have you guys part of the community. I really hope you the best. I hope you learned something from this. If you have any questions for me about editing or videos you want to see in the future, just leave it down below in the comments and we will make sure to get to it. But other than that, I'm gonna go edit because this video has to go live in like 8 hours, so I'm gonna pull an all-nighter tonight for you. And until next time, remember, stay motivated, stay inspired, and never stop creating. And I'll see you beautiful people in the next episode. Peace.